Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Asp.Net Monsters. This is episode number 27, and today we're going to talk a little bit about Docker, because we haven't done that enough. We'll never talk about Docker on this. I don't know why we even called ourselves the Asp.Net Monsters. It should have just been the Docker Monsters.
Of course.
Uh, anyway, so we have an exciting announcement, but you may notice there are only two of us here.
Yeah, and it's kind of like a three-way monster announcement. Like it should be like a trifecta of monsters in order for us to make this announcement. And
It
unfortunately,
is.
our
So I think,
Orange Monster, Dave, is actually quite ill with the flu, and he isn't able to join us tonight. So we're gonna have to make that announcement next time.
yes, some might say he's monstrously ill. Ooh. All right, so hold on, everybody, and we'll talk about what our announcement is later. But it's not a contest because you guys are too smart. I'm not do that again. Giving away T-shirts all the time. Anyway, so Docker. We're going to talk specifically about Windows containers today. We have so far talked a little bit about Linux containers. We've talked a lot about Linux containers. And we've talked about how we run them inside virtual machines on Windows, but that experience kind of stinks. However, Microsoft is in your court. They have got this covered, and they have created a way to run Windows containers inside of Windows. It's not yet released, I guess, officially yet, but there are betas available out there that you can go and play with right now, and we're going to do just that sort of thing. So I'm actually going to use the tooling inside Visual Studio today, and let's see if I can go and publish this. So I'm going to click here on Publish, and this is the standard Publish dialog that you're used to, except that there's also a Docker Containers item here. It's a little bit difficult to see in my color scheme here, but let's give it a click and see what happens. So this is going to go out to Azure, and it's going to take a look at the virtual machines that I have out on Azure already. So I have one that I was going to use for this, but I'm actually going to go and create a new one here. So let's go out here and create ourselves a new image. I'm going to use my MSDN account here. I'm going to use West US because that's pretty close to us, and so far we don't have the Canadian data centers online, but that will come soon, I hope. I was reading somewhere that you can provision SQL Server instances now in the Canadian data centers, so it is coming. Exciting news. Not so exciting if you live in Texas, I guess.
More for us north of the border, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Or I mean, vastly less exciting if you happen to live in India. Anyway, I have gone here and I'm going to provision a Windows Server 2016 technical preview with containers right here. I could provision an Ubuntu or a Core OS one, but that's not as exciting as this. Ooh, sorry, Linux folks. You've had this for a while. This is new for us in Windows. So I've given it a username just to log into that machine if necessary, and a super secret password. So I'm going to hit OK here. And this is going to provision a virtual machine in Azure for me. So let's give this a hope. Catastrophic failure.
One of the best error
So
messages you can get, I think.
that's very unfortunate. This was an unexpected error here, as opposed to the expected ones. So fortunately, I predicted exactly this sort of thing might happen. And earlier today, I went out and provisioned a server. It's also nice because now you don't have to hang around and wait for me to provision a server. So let's take a look at what the changes were that happened to our project once we had this container stuff hooked in. So you can see that we have this new publish scripts directory up here. And within it we have a bunch of files. There's a PowerShell script. I will cover that one a little bit. There is a parameters file here which lists a bunch of inputs to go into our virtual machine or our... Well, I don't want to ruin the surprise of what's in the other file, but these are parameters which are fed into this file here. So this is an Azure Resource Manager template here. It's a big blob of JSON, as you can see. Everything is JSON these days. We're going to look back on these days fondly one day as we look back on the heyday of XML in the early 2000s. And what this file does is it defines an environment inside Azure. So if you're familiar with a technology like Chef or Puppet or PowerShell DCS,
DSC.
desired state configuration, then those tools are ways of programmatically defining what an environment looks like. Or what a machine looks like. So you can use Chef to say, hey, I want this machine to have SQL Server on it, and I want to have a directory in it called super secret key, and I want to insert this key into that directory. And you can set up all of these rules and settings inside this, and you can version those files inside of your project or inside of your company somewhere, so that if something terrible happens, you can easily reprovision your machines, or if you want to spin up a test environment or anything like this. So it kind of takes away from that snowflake server that you would have had. So this file does the same sort of thing, but it does it in a larger sense, and it does it basically across all of Azure. So within this file, we have a bunch of software as a services that you can configure, and you can also configure the platform as a service stuff too. So if we spin down through this file here, and there's a handy dandy sort of navigation thing on the side here which lists all of the parameters and all of the variables that I have set up in this file. But let's jump right down here to the resources section here. So this is actually going to define which bits of Azure we're going to make use of.
And so again, this is bigger than just a VM, because this can be any type of resource inside of Azure.
Right. So, I mean, let's say that you work for a company that has 150 servers on your network, and they're all set up in specific ways. You've got DNS servers, and you've got routers and switches and all of that sort of thing. You could define that entire environment inside of this JSON file. It would be a very large JSON file, but you could conceivably do that. So that if you needed to like spin up another copy of your company, then you could do it. And that sounds like a crazy thing, but there is a funny story from my town that there was an oil and gas company, a pretty sizable oil and gas company, that decided to split itself in two. And the first thing that they did was that they like doubled their entire environment, because they didn't know like who was going to need what resources and what files belonged to what people and all of that. So they just were like, okay, we're just going to duplicate our entire data center, thousands of machines, and that's what they did.
Wow.
So there is a possibility you might want to do that. Anyway, in here I have defined a storage account for storing stuff, specifically virtual images. I've defined a public IP address here, so this is like the public facing IP address of this. Some networking stuff to get those addresses hooked up, networking interfaces on the virtual machine. The virtual machine itself is set up in here, so the parameters file defines things like the name of the computer and how big I would like the instance of it to be. I chose the smallest possible instance because I am super cheap.
I see that there's a SKU in there as well, and I think that maps back to that dev file that you had.
Right. So if we take a look here, so this is, I don't know if sure that here we go. So this is the actual image that gets provisioned, and then there's a virtual machine size here, which is basic A0, and we could turn this up to some other one, like super insane Z12, which I'm pretty sure is totally wow, I didn't like that.
It's trying to provision that right now.
It's just so shocked that anybody would provision one of these super insane Z12 machines that everything slowed right down. Yeah. So anyway, this stuff gets defined over here in this JSON file, and then the interesting bit right down here is this custom scripts bit here, and this defines kind of some extra stuff to run after we provisioned everything. In this case, it's setting up the virtual machine to allow for Docker to run on it. So at this point in time, I might right-click here and actually go publish, but that takes kind of a long time. So fortunately, I happen to have in my handy little output window here the output of the last run that I did. So if we scroll right back up to the top of this file, we can see that it's actually going to go out and it's going to build our project for us, and it's going to put those files in a temporary location here, so we can actually just steal this and take a look at what it's provisioned in there, or what it's put in there, hopefully. So we can see that there's like an app root here, and we've got the runtime that we're using here, which is the core CLR runtime on Windows x64. All the packages that we're making use of in this project. This is a stock project, so I'm only using a few packages, 200
Now,
of them.
now, and these are a lot of these are actually going to make their way into the base runtime, and so this should get smaller and smaller as we move forward.
Uh, that's totally not my understanding of how this
Oh,
is going to
okay.
go. My understanding was that there's going to be like a base package, but that's just a meta package that installs all the other
Sure,
packages.
and I was actually referring to the ones that were in system and whatnot because they're talking about creating that base. Yeah,
Okay.
you
Yes.
scroll down to the bottom there, and
Yeah.
there's a bunch there.
Yeah,
But
there's a bunch of stuff there. So uh, hopefully that will sort it out. Early days still.
early days.
Um, so this is what's going to end up getting copied up into the Docker image. I should give you guys a glimpse of the Docker file here. So the Docker file is very, very simple. It's very similar to the ones that we have looked at previously, except that now we're basing it on the Windows Server Core image, and then we just add the app directory and set the working directory here, and then we start the web.cmd, which is actually going to start the process. Anyway, as part of the publishing here, this is going to connect up to Docker in the cloud here, so there's an open port on that virtual machine. That's part of what that networking stuff did back in the JSON file. And then we're going to talk to the Docker daemon up there, and we're going to send a bunch of content up there. So this Hello World application is a slim and meager 164.3 megabytes. And then we'll start executing the Docker file up there. So using this base image here, adding all this stuff that we uploaded, setting the working directory and starting the web command here. When I ran this, it took a little while. It took a few attempts for it to actually start up, and that's because I chose the smallest possible virtual machine, and it takes a little while to kind of compile everything and spin everything up here. But I'm sure all of our wealthy listeners will provision much larger machines.
Like the Super Insane Z12.
Absolutely.
They're up to like
So
256 cores now, right, on that one?
Oh, what? Really?
Insane.
Wow, that's a lot of cores.
7 gigabytes of RAM.
I should provision one of those just for the fun of it. If you look at the price of these things, anytime I do like a day-long talk on Azure or something, I provision the biggest possible machine I can, just for the heck of it, and I run it for a day, and it costs me like $20 or something. But it's worth it just to do that for the fun of it. All right, so that's gone up. It's provisioned this environment here, and it's gonna run this here. So if I go and steal this here, and then pop over here, we can see that I already actually have it up here. So we should have made some modifications to this to prove that it was running on Docker and Windows, but there is Docker Cloud here, and if anybody doubts us, we can prove it later.
With an arm wrestle.
Depends on who's questioning us. What is happening in my house? Okay, so I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about here for Docker. It's exciting that it runs on Windows. It's still super early days, so this isn't out there yet, but it will be soon-ish. Probably, well, I don't know. It's like Windows 2016, so it's probably going to come in 2016.
Right.
So very exciting. And hopefully people will join us on the next episode of Asp.Net Monsters. I can't gloat about how nobody has won our contest because we don't have a contest running at the moment.
They are all solved.
Yep, but we're gonna come up with something.
Tricky.
Yeah, it's gonna be crazy this time. All right, thanks a lot everybody for listening.
Thanks.
We'll see you next time. Bye.
So